In 1996, China had no answer. Two U.S. carrier strike groups entered the Taiwan Strait, and Beijing watched them pass. There was nothing the People's Liberation Army could do about it. That was 30 years ago. The PLA has spent every year since building its answer. And the answer is not a carrier. It's not a stealth fighter. It's not any single weapon system. It's a trap. A layered, interlocking architecture built around one operational problem. How do you destroy the U.S. Navy before it reaches Taiwan? The United States has built the most powerful blue water naval force in history. Aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, Aegis destroyers, fifth-generation aircraft. For most of that time, the assumption inside the Pentagon was that dominance was enough, that presence was deterrence, that the carriers showing up would end the conversation before it started. What China concluded after watching those carriers sail through the strait in 1996 was something different. Dominance at sea doesn't matter if you can destroy the fleet before it arrives. If you've never seen this channel before, this is what we do. We take the operations that changed how countries fight, and we show you exactly what happened and why. Subscribe if that's what you're here for. The doctrine China built in response has a clinical name: anti-access/area denial. The U.S. military calls it A2/AD. In practice, it's a kill zone, a geographic area centered on the Taiwan Strait and extending deep into the Western Pacific, where operating a U.S. carrier strike group becomes, in the Pentagon's own modeling, potentially catastrophic. It wasn't built overnight. China's defense budget stood at approximately $30 billion in the year 2000. By 2024, the official figure exceeded $225 billion. And U.S. intelligence estimates place actual spending 25 to 40% above that. Every dollar was targeted. The PLA wasn't building a military to match the United States across every domain. It was building a military to defeat one specific operation, in one specific geography, during one specific window. The architecture has 3 layers. Each one is designed to solve a different problem for a U.S. strike group commander. The first is the missile threat. In 2010, China declared the DF-21D operational, the first land-based ballistic missile in history, designed specifically to strike moving warships at sea. The U.S. Navy called it the carrier killer. Its range runs to approximately 1,500 kilometers. It uses a maneuvering re-entry vehicle, a warhead that adjusts its trajectory in the terminal phase of flight to track a moving target after re-entry. The Navy's existing interceptors were not built against that flight profile. Then came the DF-26, declared operational in 2016. Range: 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers, enough to cover Guam, the primary U.S. forward operating base in the Pacific. U.S. analysts gave it its own name, the Guam Killer. It's dual-capable, meaning it can carry either a conventional or a nuclear warhead, switchable between them. That design feature confronts every U.S. commander watching one inbound with a question that has no clean answer: conventional strike or the beginning of something else? Hypersonics followed. The DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicle entered service in 2019. The YJ-21, a hypersonic anti-ship missile launched from surface ships, was tested from a Type 055 destroyer in 2022 at speeds estimated above Mach 6. Hypersonic glide vehicles don't follow a ballistic arc. They fly at lower altitudes, maneuvering throughout at extreme speed. The Congressional Research Service confirmed in 2023 that the U.S. Navy's Aegis ballistic missile defense system has not been tested against simultaneous multi-axis saturation attacks. The second layer is submarines. China operates the world's largest navy by hull count, according to the U.S. Department of Defense's 2023 report. Its submarine force includes UN-class diesel-electric boats with air-independent propulsion, a technology that allows extended submerged operation without the acoustic signature of a conventional diesel engine. At slow speeds, they are extremely difficult to detect. The U.S. Navy learned exactly how difficult in 2006. A Chinese Song-class submarine surfaced undetected within torpedo range of the USS Kitty Hawk in the open Pacific. Not near a coastline, not in shallow water, in open ocean. The submarine had tracked the carrier strike group, closed to firing range, and surfaced. It hadn't been detected at any point. The incident was serious enough to trigger a classified reassessment of Pacific anti-submarine operations. The third layer is the magazine problem. A Nimitz or Ford-class carrier strike group carries a finite number of interceptors. Across all escort ships in a standard configuration, cruisers and destroyers, the group holds approximately 300 to 400 standard missiles in total, SM-2s, SM-3s, SM-6s. Once that supply is gone, the group has no more intercepts. PLA doctrine is built around that number, not around defeating U.S. missile defense, around exhausting it. Consider what China can put in the air simultaneously. DF-21D and DF-26 brigades deployed in Fujian province opposite Taiwan. Shore-based YJ-12 anti-ship missiles carried on H-6K bombers. YJ-18 cruise missiles launched from submarines and surface ships. Multiple vectors, simultaneous, from different altitudes and trajectories. A RAND Corporation analysis, first published in 2015 and updated in 2017, found that in a Taiwan Strait scenario, a U.S. carrier strike group could face magazine exhaustion before the PLA exhausted its offensive capacity. The magazine runs dry, the interceptors are gone, what comes next arrives uncontested, and this is where the math stops being theoretical. In January of 2023, the Center for Strategic and International Studies published results from the most comprehensive public wargame of a Taiwan conflict ever conducted. They ran the scenario dozens of times with different variables. In most of them, the United States and Taiwan repel the Chinese invasion. The cost of winning, in most scenarios, included 2 U.S. aircraft carriers sunk, up to 10,000 U.S. military casualties in the first 3 weeks of combat, and hundreds of aircraft destroyed. A naval force that would take 5 to 10 years to replace. We cover operations like this every week, the ones that changed how countries fight, and the ones that showed exactly how they fail. If you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. The CSIS analysts noted it explicitly. The United States would win and emerge too weakened to deter the next move. That is the trap. Not that China defeats the U.S. Navy outright. That China makes the price of showing up high enough to matter. None of that kill chain works without targeting data. You cannot shoot what you cannot find, and China solved that problem with the same deliberation it applied to everything else. The Yaogan reconnaissance satellite constellation provides near-continuous surveillance of western Pacific sea lanes, with a refresh rate over key zones estimated at 30 to 60 minutes, according to CSIS analysis from 2023. Over-the-horizon radar systems, including the Type 636 OTH radar network, extend detection range well beyond line of sight. Maritime patrol aircraft and unmanned underwater vehicles cover the gaps. In 2016, China seized a U.S. Navy unmanned underwater vehicle from the USNS Bowditch in the South China Sea. The UUV was recovered, inspected, and eventually returned. What China learned about U.S. underwater surveillance capabilities in that window was not: find the carrier, track it, hand the targeting data to the missile forces. That is the kill chain. China has invested in every link. The U.S. military has not stood still. The Navy's NIFC-CA network, Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air, links ships and aircraft into a distributed sensor web, extending the effective defensive engagement envelope of a strike group. The SM-3 Block 2A has a confirmed intercept record against ballistic missiles. The SE-WIP electronic warfare program is in advanced fleet deployment. But the Marine Corps' own restructuring tells you something about how the U.S. military reads this problem. Under Force Design 2030, the Marines eliminated their tank battalions, reduced infantry, and stood up Marine littoral regiments, small, distributed mobile units built to operate from Pacific Island chains with anti-ship missiles and targeting sensors. The 1st Marine Littoral Regiment became operational in Hawaii in 2023. The 3rd activated in Okinawa. These are not forces designed for a conventional fight. They are built for the specific geography of a Taiwan contingency holding the island chain, not storming a beach. Taiwan has shifted along the same logic. Under the overall defense concept developed by Admiral Lee Si-min, Taiwan's Chief of General Staff from 2017 to 2019, the island moved away from large conventional platforms toward asymmetric systems, mobile anti-ship missiles, coastal harpoon batteries, HIMARS-equivalent rocket artillery, sea mines, hard to locate, hard to target, hard to destroy in a first strike. Taiwan has ordered 400 Harpoon coastal defense launchers from the United States. Its defense budget reached a record $19.1 billion in 2024, roughly 2.5% of GDP. China ran a rehearsal in May of 2024. The exercise Joint Sword 2024A, launched in response to Taiwan's presidential inauguration, was the largest Taiwan encirclement exercise the PLA had ever conducted, simulating simultaneous blockade and missile strike operations around the island. U.S. analysts who reviewed it described the exercise not as preparation for invasion, but as a rehearsal for cutting Taiwan off before a shot is fired. The U.S. positioned USS Theodore Roosevelt and her strike group in the region, the same signal Washington has sent since 1996. The same carriers, the same presence. Admiral Phil Davidson, then commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, told the Senate Armed Services Committee in March of 2021 that China could move on Taiwan within the next 6 years. His successor, Admiral John Aquilino, told Congress in March of 2023 that the threat was real and that the most dangerous period would fall within that decade. The 2022 National Defense Strategy named China the pacing threat, the first time the United States had designated a single nation as the primary driver of its entire military planning apparatus. Those are not analysts. Those are the men who command U.S. forces in the Pacific, speaking on the record under oath. Elbridge Colby, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, stated it directly in 2022. If China takes Taiwan, the game is largely over in Asia. What remains unresolved is the one variable no wargame can fully model: whether the price China has built into the calculation is high enough to change an American decision before the missiles fly, not after. The carriers are still sailing. The DF-26 brigades are still deployed. In 1996, China watched and had no answer. The answer is ready now.